Okay, so back to the Suzuki again. So when we left off, it was looking pretty much like this. The only thing that's changed is I've put this coolant pipe in pretty last minute because I forgot to do it, and there's a couple of some sort of catch bottles for leaking fluids or petrols I forgot to put in, which I've lobbed in. So I've just got some matte white paint and put a little bit of grey in there to change the colour slightly. Bit of tape around that one to make it look like it's been held in with a clip. The black is a bit messy, but you're never going to see it. The other thing I've done is, this is a gearbox breather here, so I've put that pipe down into that little catch can there. I don't know if it is to catch oil coming out of the gearbox breather or not, but it adds a bit of detail in this area. So no changes there. Fork legs, sprayed the bottom halves a aluminium colour, brush painted the calipers in black. Then this little line here is something that's not part of the kit, but from the brake pressure line it goes down to this anti-dive mechanism, so when you pull the brakes it stiffens up the fork so the nose doesn't dive. So it needs a little pipe going from there, so that was just a case of drilling a hole in there, using a little section of the kit hose, which is way over scale, to represent the union on either side of that, then using some of this 0.5mm cable to go between the two. So that's that done. Then a couple of the little bolts I've been using just drilled into there, so it looks a bit more, it just looks like it's bolted on rather than having a little blob of plastic on it. So I'm quite happy with those. Both of those are done. Discs are done. I have looked at references on a modern bike. These have got holes in the middle. On this one it isn't. It's just a flat rivet holding those to the carriers. That's all right. Then the this holds the rev counter, and presumably that bit there is the bike electronics. So I've just put a couple of bolts in there again to make it look a bit more visually interesting. I'm not sure about the accuracy of that as such. And then I've come on to a bit of a problem actually. So if I were to get the petrol tank and pop it on, and the seat unit and pop it on, there's a slight mismatch between the pinstriping I've put on there and the white line. Now I know that one's central because it's centered on the petrol tank, petrol filler. I know that one's central because I've measured it and I know it is. So I think what's happened is when I've put the frame together, there's been a slight mismatch on the two halves, and I've tried to line up this area as well as I can, because you'll see that, and I had to fill that rather than worrying about where these two pegs are. So I think they've slightly shifted that way, so when the tank sits on, it slightly skews over and kicks it out. Now it's not a big problem because I've started to over drill these holes to a larger size, and I'll carry on doing that, and if the worst comes to worst I'll cut one of these pegs off and then we'll just glue it on one side, and I'll just spin it round till it matches the seat. But when I come to put it together, I've got to make sure I've got this seat unit glued on permanently. Then I can line the tank up. See, that's not too bad now. It's not a million miles out. Line the tank up and then glue the tank and hold it in place. So it'll be gluing that on next. So I'll need to put another couple of bolt heads here where the seat fairing bolts on, and the inside of the seat fairing and the main fairing I'm going to paint a sort of RAF grey, something like it's a grey gel coat in there. I'll just brush paint it in. I'm not going to be too neat about it. So what else do we need to do? I mean, I'm at a point now where I could almost finish this today, but there'd be some little bits and pieces still had to do, and if we go down that road, the next video will be really short, so I'll do a little bit today and then the finish off and the reveal on the next video. That's part of the bottom half of the front forks, and again drilled a couple of bolt heads in that one, so wherever there's a little blob representing a bolt, they didn't get too easy, and putting my own bolt heads in just to make it look a bit neater. Things still to do. So that masking worked, so where the looks like the chrome fork legs are coming through, this has been sprayed semi-gloss black, and I've just touched the ends in with a gloss black. These levers I think are going to be aluminium, but I'll probably paint them in with one of these aluminium pens I've been using, the real colour markers, rather than mask it, just draw them in with that. That's not going to be a problem. The things that are of concern on this is you've got 4 throttle cables coming out of the twist grip there, which is probably right looking at the photos, but they come out a bit of an angle. So I've got a feeling ours, when they come out, they'll come up too high and look a bit silly. So I may drill out 4 half-mil holes there and drop in some 90-degree wire bent at 90 degrees, so the throttle cables will come out more in this direction and loop underneath. It's one of these awkward ones. I'll have to make my mind up before I put it together, but then it might not work, so it's all a bit guessworky. But I don't think having the cables coming up and looping down there is going to look that realistic. So they sort of come out of an angle on the proper one, but I don't really fancy drilling it at an angle because I'll have to respray the whole lot if I get that wrong. So tricky one, but we'll figure that one out. What else have we done? The decals, as I imagined, had just fell apart on the rev counter and the temperature gauge. I've blobbed them together as best I can. They're not perfect, but underneath the shiny sheet of glass they're looking all right. And the shiny sheet of glass, I've tried using varnishes and doing it that old-fashioned way everyone does. Put a blob of varnish in and it'll all be shiny. Works on model aircraft, but on something bigger like this, it tends to go a bit convex after a while. So what I did was had a bit of clear acetate sheet like that. My circle template that I use all the time for everything, and you just get the size, which in this case was 5mm and 3mm, I think. Then I've got a needle in an X-Acto knife handle, and you just go round gently scribing it'll start to catch when it's nearly through. You don't push too hard and just scratch your way down. Seems to work. That pops out, so you end up with a little flat disc of clear plastic, and then I've then gone around the edges with a Sharpie, just like that, so you don't get that silvery edge when you look at an angle. You just see a black edge like it's a little gasket on it. So did that, then just dropped them into the temperature gauge and the rev counter, and watered down a bit of ultra glue. I quite like this, but it does seem to go very, very stiff in the jar very quickly, so I've just got a bit of that, watered it down so it could flow quite easily, and just dripped it around the edges of those to hold them in, and they'll stay there now. But you do get a proper glazed look on it, and it's a flat glazed look, not convex to concave as though it's as you get when you're using well, traditionally it's crystal clear, but that sort of product, so quite happy with them. These are the little water cooling pipes that I don't know which side they go on. I'll just put it on now for now, but they sit on the cylinders, something like that. So painted silver, painted black, and then I've been putting the aluminium tape around it to represent the hose clips you get on these things. So where's my aluminium? That'll be upside down. Well, I didn't want it upside down. I'm using this, which is the tape you use to hold insulation on ductwork. Actually, you can get it from hardware stores, but I like bare metal foil if you've got a big area. It sits nice and flat and it burnishes down okay. I tend to find when you get little narrow strips, the glue thickness is probably as thick as the bare metal foil and tends to skate around on the surface. So this, I tend to find, is a lot more sticky. So if I'm doing something like a hose clamp, I just cut a little strip of it off. Doing this on camera, it's not going to work. It's worked perfectly before. Slap it roughly where you want, and don't forget there's no sort of set point for a hose clip in real life anyway. They're just going to be screwed on by mechanics, so they're not always going to be identical, so you don't have to panic too much about that. And just wrap it round. If you're going to have any overlap, it's best to have it at the back so you can't see the thickness of it. So we'll just give that a little trim there. There was no real measuring, it was just all done by eye. Just trim that little bit off there. And you can be wasteful. This comes in about 30-meter rolls. It's going to last you a lifetime. Even if you're only just being born when you're watching this, it's going to last you a lifetime. So I don't mind being a little bit wasteful, whereas bare metal foil I'm a bit more careful with because it costs an arm and a leg and you don't get that much of it. But that can go around there. Bit of a pull to get it tight. Got some scissors there just to nip off what I don't want. Just fold it down. Then you get a reasonable representation of hose clamps, and so it doesn't matter they're not in the same place on there. But the glue on that will hold that a lot more securely than you will get with bare metal foil, which is why I choose that option. So I think I'm going to have to switch the camera off to start putting things together a bit, because it's going to get... Oh, and that's the other thing I've done. The radiator, I didn't like the grey bits in the end that you saw last time. I said it added texture, so I gave it another coat of LP5, the Tamiya semi-gloss black. And to get some sort of definition of the fins, I've just got a normal HB pencil. I've done these two, so I'll do this one. And just gone down there. Over the high points. Then the bits in between, just put your pencil there, drag it down. And that just highlights parts of the radiator matrix, and I can do that on the back as well. I suppose I should, in case you see it from any angle, but I don't think you will with the way the fairing sits around it. We'll just do it because we can. But it's far quicker and less messy than messing about with dry brushing, and you do get that nice metallic sheen without being too silvery if you use graphite from pencil. So there's a radiator cap got to go on, which I'll put on when it's on the thing, so it'll get knocked off. Again, bolt heads where it bolts to the frame. I've drilled out this little lug on it here to have a wire come out of it, because that's the sensor for the temperature gauge apparently, so I can glue in a bit of this stuff. Glue in a bit of that and lead that to the back of the temperature gauge there, so that looks okay. So what I'll probably do is, that pipe is relatively stiff, so I'm guessing I'm better off gluing this on, making sure the glue's fully cured, then bending that pipe up, because I think it's going to have a tendency to try and pull this off the frame while it's setting. So we'll get this all secured first and put that pipe on. It's going to be harder to do it that way, but I think it's going to be a better way of holding that radiator in place. Front wheel can't go on until the fairings are all on. I've got a couple of supports that come out of here to hold the fairing, which I need to drill the ends of them so they can accept a bolt through the fairing here. Then I've got to put some dummy bolt heads all the way around here, and I've got some rivets to go underneath where the clear parts go, so I'll put them in, but I'm not liking them as much as the bolt heads I've been playing with. Strictly speaking honest, I've got some proper metal ones on that, but anyway, that's by the by. So this will need a coat of grey. We'll need to put the bolt heads in. Any bolts down here, wherever there was a bolt on the fairing, I've drilled a hole so I can just replace them with my resin ones, and that'll have quite a good definition on it. So that's kind of where we are on that. I'm going to switch this off, put some things together just so we can see where we are, and then we'll come back when some more bits are attached and explain what I've done. So that's it for now. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so back again. I'm about to finish for the day. So she's come on quite a way. So the front wheel's on, albeit I'll have to unscrew the wheel and take it off. A bit of corny exhaust. Take it off to slip the fairing over. Slip the carburetors on, and the radiator and that hose is installed, as are the two that come down to the sides there. We've still got to put the radiator cap on, but say that's going to be easy to knock off, so I'll do that last. Carburetors, I've connected a fuel line, the main throttle and a choke, and I was surprised this had a choke, but there you go, it seems to say it does. So I'll put choke cables on them. All the photos show it, so it seems a bit odd. What I tend not to do is connect these up to the sort of corresponding areas. So the throttle cables, these ones will end underneath the tank, and depending how the tank sits, I'll make a little bracket and just glue these up under here, so that way when you turn the steering, you're not likely to dislodge your carburetor. So just makes it look a bit more neat and realistic. Likewise for the actual throttle cables, I'll bring them forward underneath here and just attach them to something just back here out of the way that you'll never see, but I'll serve the purpose to make it look like they're attached. So that was that part of the day. I've painted the handlebar grips in a sort of rubbery grey colour. That's still quite loose, so I might tighten up later on. I've painted a rubbery grey colour just to differentiate it from the handlebars, and I'll put a little thin bit of wire on that eventually and twist it, because all these have lock wires on them, but I'll do that later on. These need painting silver. Clutch cable's now routed, so I can cut that to length and stick it in the correct place there. What else? These little bars here are to hold the fairing on, so I've glued them in place, but I've drilled a 0.5mm hole in the end. Then I can get a suitable size bolt out of my collection, put it through the fairing and put it into that. Otherwise you just get a little black blob in the fairing, and I want that to look bolted on. So isn't a great deal that's happened since you've last seen it, but there's enough to make it a motorbike that stands on its own wheels, which is always a bit of a good thing. The fairing I've just painted grey inside, and before I leave the shed tonight I'll glue the windscreen in there, so it's got plenty of time to cure before I come back to it. Seems to fit reasonably well. I've gone round the edge there with a black Sharpie. If you don't do that, you get this sort of silver line going all the way around it where the light reflects off the end of the plastic. It did scar a bit there where the attachment sprue was, but you can't have everything. But that'll bond on, and then I'll either do it, I might do it before I put it on. I'll put all the little rivets around the outside. That big hole is this bracket that fits in the frame, and that needs a bolt in each place there, and I'll just glue a bolt head over that hole so it doesn't look like again another bit of black plastic poking through. So yeah, we're sort of on the final throws. I'll try and get it done in the next couple of days, so next week you'll have the finished video with the reveal photos. But once the glue's set on these carbs, all the cables and things will be tucked out of the way, and I'll find ways to... Oh, that's the other thing I've done, is wired up put the spark plugs in and put the HT leads on from the coils, so that's all done. They were painted as like a reddish brown for the cap, a little bit of white, then silver, so it looks like you can see part of the insulator, then the silver going into it. So yeah, that's the front mount all on with the speedo and the temperature gauge. I'll have to get a little bit of cable from the end of that and feed it down into this end of the radiator there. So there's all these little fiddly jobs to finish off, but I don't think I'm going to take that long. The bits that are going to have taken a while is I've got to let things set before I move further forward, because it's quite easy to get carried away and dislodge stuff. So we'll call it a day on that. I'll take a few photos of it as well so you can see it. Then say final assembly on the next video and some finishes. So that, yeah, again, that needs painting a sort of foam rubber black, so I'll do that. That's a seat. Sorry, that should clip into there. So definitely over the next couple of days I want this seat unit on and bonded down so I can line the tank up to it and do any carving on the tank I need to do. But it's starting to look quite busy with all the cables, quite happy with it. So thanks for watching this bit, and I will be back with a final part of it a week after doesn't matter when you see this, keep forgetting. It will be, if you're watching this as I put it up, it'll be about a week before it's finished. So thanks for sticking with it. It's dragged on a little bit, but we're nearly finished with it, and that's it.